Hi there, I'm Ann Johnston. I've been making quilts for, well, since 1975 about. So I have to say that I have made a lot of quilts. Many of them were for beds, many of them were for the walls, and many of them were very, very tiny. Uh, in any case, I thought it'd be fun to share with you the pictures I've been taking as I made this quilt for my grandson Kai. It's been a real process, an adventure. Each of my grandchildren, when they turn 6, we have a conversation about what they would like on their big bed. So first I start with talking with them, then sometimes they give me a drawing, and we decide what kind of figures and shapes are going to be in the quilt. This is a drawing that Kai made when he was 6 years old, and he made it as a birthday card for a friend, but we thought it would be a good start for a whole quilt design. By the way, the black circle under the mountains with the colors on it is a chocolate donut with sprinkles. We looked at the mountains and we decided he decided he liked the striped lines. So we put them on the top and the bottom, and he thought, well, we could have the sky with lots of colors on top, and we could have below, we could have all the colors in water. And after we looked at it for a while, we realized that he could make it right side up and upside down with mountain peaks showing in both directions. I took the sketch and I kind of figured out the scale, how much of the quilt would be in the middle, how large the pieces of fabric would be above and below it. In this image you see my dye studio, and I have a piece of paper on the table here showing my sketch, full size, ready to draw. Over here you see the waves. I did the waves first because they seemed easier. This is a video of me painting the waves. I'm using thickened black dye, squeezing it out of a very fine tipped pointed bottle. And I'm working pretty quickly because I don't want to make big blobs. The line, as you can see, sometimes I miss the pencil line you're looking at underneath the fabric. In fact, I have the full drawing on paper, and then over the paper I have clear vinyl, and then I put the fabric down so I don't have to mark the fabric at all, and so I can change my mind as I'm painting. I made 3 full-size pieces of these waves because I knew I only needed 2, but I would need 1 for practicing with the lines and practicing with applying the colors. I did find that I did a lot better when I was painting this if I held my breath. After I did the black lines, I thought it would be fun to have more complexity in the shapes of waves. So I got out my favorite water-soluble resist. It's called corn dextrin. It comes as a powder. You mix it with boiling water, just stir it up. And in this picture you see I have a strainer because I want to make sure there's no lumps because I'm going to put it in a pointed bottle. I do have that recipe available on my website anytime you want to look it up. So this is one of the wave pieces of fabric on the table, taped down. It's on a piece of heavy white vinyl, and on the right you can see a detail of my black lines, and then this yellowish marking is the corn dextrin, and it's dried. It's ready for me to paint over it. So getting ready to paint, I have to decide what colors. In this case, I mixed a whole variety of blues. These are the dark versions of the blue and I kept notes on more or less what I put in the base colors. And then I also kept a record of what it was like to dilute the colors and what the lighter values of each color looked like. So on the day I was ready to paint, I mixed up all 4 of those blues and some of the lighter versions, but not all of them. As I painted, I could decide if I wanted a lighter value of one of the blues, I could use this, it's print paste. It actually is the thickener, and if you add it, it makes the colors lighter. This video shows me painting on the blues. I'm using a very nice, smooth 1-inch nylon brush. And when I paint over the corn dextrin, I make sure I really get the paint next to the print, the corn dextrin. That way it will make a very distinct line when I've washed it. I got better at this as I painted, but it was quite satisfying to paint in the lines. I don't do that all the time. You can see there's a bulge at the end of the paint. That fabric stretches when it gets wet. So gradually, as I work across the fabric, I will pull it to pull out some of the little wrinkles. This is a photograph of the fabric. I painted a lot of the blue in. It's not entirely dry. You see light and dark areas, and that is still getting dry. One of the things that when you're dyeing fabric with Procyon dyes, it takes time to work, so you need to allow some moisture over several hours at least to let the dye fix with the cotton. Here's a larger image of the whole piece of fabric, and you can see I have plastic over it because I want to make sure it doesn't dry out too fast. On the right is an image of the fabric that was going to be the sky. It is a little wrinkly looking because the corn dextrin is already on it and it has dried, and it kind of shrinks a little as it dries. On the left you see my colors. I didn't really have a plan, except I knew I wanted to make the lighter colors on the top side of the sky. So what I did is I did a computer printout, just a sketch of what the lines might be like and where I might put the colors, the complements, and the light and dark values. I have a gray scale version on the right so I can check and see if I really had the lights and darks where I thought they might be. So I started in the middle. I can reach the middle easily from one side of the table, and immediately I realized I, by accident, had painted in this green area. I meant to leave it for a different color. So I just continued to paint, and I came back to it later. When I came back to it, I decided it should be a darker green, and I took this blue, kind of a medium value blue, and painted it over the bright green, so it turned it to a dark green. Here's a video of painting the sky, and as I'm painting over the corn dextrin, you can see I had lots more curling lines and shapes, hoping to suggest clouds. Again, I kind of go slowly where I've got the corn dextrin because I want to make sure I have all the dye over it so it will resist and show a white line when I'm done. It's all washed. It comes out with the extra dye with water. It's not like wax. It just dissolves in water. So as I move across a piece of fabric, I can't reach across the table. I do have a preference to work right to left, and I have things taped on one end, and then I move across the fabric. You see that I need to move the fabric so it's actually taped to a piece of heavy white vinyl, and then I can pull the vinyl instead of just pulling the fabric and avoid doing some smearing. The hard part is after it's all painted and I've waited overnight and let it dry to see what it looks like, then I put it in the wash. The first few steps I do in the sink with Synthropol, and I move up to very hot water. And then I move up to the washing machine. I literally wash it in 150-degree water to make sure it will never bleed. After it's washed and ironed, here's a video of the fabric for the water. It's a big piece of fabric, so the video shows the details better. It's shiny because it's cotton sateen. One side of it is woven so it gives a sheen, which is very nice for a quilt. Here's a video of the sky fabric, and now you can see more of the curlicues, the clouds. As I produce this fabric, I've got waves with black lines and complicated waves with white lines, and I was thinking about how I might quilt it because my quilting lines would add another level of complexity. So I started in on the middle project with my black bottle, and again, it's a long reach. I didn't know how smoothly I'd be able to draw these lines. The fabric has soda ash already on. It's been dried and lightly ironed, so it makes it a little easier to make it smooth. I think I'm even holding my breath as I watch myself on the video. This slide shows a detail of the blue side of the mountains. The gridded marks are made by putting a rubber grid, like from your kitchen sink drainer. I put it under the fabric, and I had rollers with different color blues on it, and I roll across and take rubbings of the colors. Here is the overall view of it at this stage. And this shows that I painted over all of that gridded work and blended in the blues. It's exactly the same way I did the yellow. I put a grid under the yellow that had circles on it, and then I did rubbings of the circles, and then I filled in the background of another value of yellow. I think that if I had used a lighter value of yellow, the circles would pop out a little more. But this is the finishing touches on the middle of the quilt. Again, putting in the sink is hard, but I've done it so many times, I just say I have to get over it. The fabric lets go of a lot of the dye that didn't fix, and then you wash that out and repeat the washings a few times before I get a real hot water, and then I put it in the washing machine and make sure that there's no extra dye. I do have a handout on my website where you can see what I have to say about how I wash my dyed fabrics. So I needed a back, and I picked a gorgeous marine blue. I thought it would be great. It would go with all the colors in the sky and the mountains and in the water. I used my typical low water immersion dyeing recipes, but it's a big piece of fabric. I have a big plastic box, and in order to get a smooth color like you see on the right, I stirred it the entire hour after I put in the soda ash. I do have slight variations. I folded it so you could see them. All of that stirring makes it so there's no crinkles. But when I had poured on the dye, I poured more on one side of it than the other. So it would just have slight variations in the values of the colors. However, talking to Kai, I showed him the blue for the back, and he really wanted to have a dark purple because he had a good reason for this. If you get under a dark purple quilt, then it's really dark in there when you're making a fort. So I took that same piece of blue and I overdyed it again in a fairly strong fuchsia dye in order to get this color purple. Now I've started assembling the quilt. I literally cut along the shapes of the lines from the waves, and I laid them over the middle piece to determine where I would put them. This is the part of the sky where I cut it off, and this is ironed. It's an ironed seam. It's about 1/4 of an inch, and I fold it down over here, and I can get my cutting line and my seam line. Both those are guides for me to cut the yellow. So here I've cut the yellow, and you see the other dotted line is left, and that's going to be my seam line. And I'm going to join it to this orange up here. I've got it pinned, a lot of curves, so I have a lot of pins, and it's quite simple to create a nice smooth seam this way. Here I am ironing it. And a detail. You can see the designs are overlapping already, and the yellow down here, you can see some of the circles. So I decided to quilt circles in the yellow. I chose a bright green thread, and I used it over the entire quilt. And it shows up a little differently depending on which color it's on. As I was quilting, I knew I'd put his name in it, and I thought maybe I should put in some animals. So I asked him what he thought, and he gave me a list. You can see the bunny up here, and I had drawings of the different shapes I wanted, and I literally laid them on the quilt as I was stitching so I wouldn't forget to stop and, do the silhouette of the animal. These are some of the ones I did. I thought the moose was pretty hard, and I didn't think the legs would show up. Likewise with the crab, all these little legs, they wouldn't show up on a quilt with puffy wool batting in it. So for the crab, I put him right at the bottom of the quilt, and I just had his arms reaching up. This is a video of the final quilting. I've got his name here, and you'll see some of the other details. It was fun to do, and fun to see how the textures made nice puffy surfaces. There's a dolphin here in the middle. A lot of them are quite invisible. I did think it would be fun for him to search for them. So here's the quilt on the wall in my studio. It's just been bound, and I'm waiting to have an afternoon. I want to be there. I'm going to put it in the washing machine. And I literally put it in the washing machine on a normal load. I probably put it on warm, cold. Didn't have a lot of dirt, but I just wanted to get it all wetted, and then and spun out, and then I put it in my dryer, and I dried it about almost dry, not completely dry. And then I laid it on a table to flatten it a little and get it all squared up for going to the photographer. It was a 2-ladder thing to get it up there, and for something that size, you really need a big space, and you need the light coming from different angles to show off the quilting. But this photographer, Jim Lomason, is a pro at this for me. So you can see the moose just barely hidden here on the front, and he's much clearer on the back. And here's the cat on the front, reaching up, and on the back. Now you see Kai's quilt. It's all ready. It's in the suitcase. We had to fly to see him and deliver it for his 7th birthday. It was really fun to see him open it up and immediately wrap it around himself. So there you have it. That's how I made Kai's quilt. If you have any questions, let me know. I'd love to answer them. Meanwhile, I do have some publications, books about designing quilts, and my dye courses that are online available, and my dye books. This particular book is no longer in print because I replaced it with this video course, but it is free on my website if you want to download it. So, thank you for listening. Let me know if you have questions. Bye.